Guys, to this yet another session of the advanced Excel tutorial. We are covering the part 2 of the product database. Without further ado, let's begin. We are going to put in the formula for the cost price column. We have already done this formula in the previous session. We are going to use the formula in this case called as random between. It's a general formula just for generating random numbers. So the random between formula, we are going to type equals to RandBetween, random between, bracket open. We have to give in the lowest value that we want to begin with. So I'm going to say, let's say 10 bucks. One of the product cost, let's 10 bucks. And the maximum value that we want in a particular column, let's say 1,000 bucks. So we are going to use the two variables, the minimum and the lowest one and the maximum one, to create a random between formula. And while pressing enter, there you go, we have some random values in all the columns. Now if you can see, the random between formula is also called as active formula. When I say an active formula, when I click anywhere outside the cell, double click anywhere or refresh it, the value in the cell automatically updates again and again. It is a hassle for any individual working on with a particular database if this keeps on happening. So what we are going to do is now make this particular column constant by removing the values, that is removing the formulas from these columns or cells and just keeping the values in place. So to do that, all we got to do is select the entire data column. In this particular case, I'm using the shift key to make a selection of the entire column. You can simply go and select the entire column by using your mouse as well. Then we are going to use the right mouse button. Don't forget how to use this. We are going to use the right mouse button. There's a small trick to using this, so let's follow it. Using the right mouse button, I'm going to click on the border, the right border of this particular selection that I've created. So once I click on the right border, I'm going to drag my mouse to the right of my column. Don't forget that you have to keep your mouse pressed. Don't leave your right mouse button. Again, go back to the same column in the same place and leave your mouse. So we selected the bounding area, that is the border of the particular selection, using the right mouse button, dragged the column to the right. Again, I dragged the column back to the left and then released my right mouse button. Once that is done, you get this particular option over here. We are going to use this option as copy here as values only. So the moment I click on that, all the formula from this particular data set or this particular column is gone, and all is left is the particular value. So now the values in this particular cell will not be changed on refreshing any particular cell. So that's how you use the random between formula and make it constant. The next column that we are going to do is the total cost price. The total cost price, the formula for the total cost price is equals to the cost price. You can see the column labels being used in the formulas will help you out to identify the formulas and mistakes as well. The cost price plus, we are going to use a bracket in this case to find out a GST percentage on a particular cost price. We are going to use cost price gain multiplied by the GST percentage in this case. So we are calculating 18% of 781 in this particular section. 18% of 781 plus 781 will give me the total cost price. So all you got to do is press enter and we have got our column where the total cost price is calculated. Now guys, there is one more thing that we have to use over here to round off certain values that we have in this particular column. So we are going to use one more formula called as the RoundUp formula in order to remove the decimal places, the ones we have in this case like 0.58, 0.08, 0.5, 0.04, 0.34, which is not going to help me out by calculating values in our total revenue in the total data set. So we are going to try and remove these particular cost price in the decimal format by using the a RoundUp formula. So how to use the RoundUp formula? Before starting to use the formula, I'm going to double click on the first cell, and before starting off with the formula, that is after the equal to sign, all I'm going to do is type the formula round up. So round up states that whatever value we have, may it be 0.8 or 0.58 or zero point 0.5, the roundup formula will round up the value of the value before the decimal place to a value which is higher. In this case, round up, bracket open, and we are going to enclose the entire formula, that is cost price plus cost price into GST percentage, inside a roundup formula. Before doing that, all you got to do is one single thing. I'm going to use a comma after the entire formula that we did, and I'm going to put in a 0. Since we want to round up the entire formula to 0 decimal places, that means we want 00 after the decimal places after each value. So we are going to put a comma 0 in this case, bracket close, and hit enter. So there you go, we have rounded up all the values calculated from the cost price and adding the GST percentage in this case. So rounding up has helped us doing that. If we just increase the decimal places over here in this case, you can see that after the decimal places we now have only zeros. So the roundup formula helps us to get this particular. So let's start with the column for quantity purchased. The quantity purchased, I'm going to use a random number in this case. Alright, let's say for now I'm going to use 100 quantities of all of the products purchased. So in this case I'm going to use equals to 100. It will do the job of populating the entire column with 100. So the total revenue invested is the total cost price multiplied by the quantity of the product purchased on that particular product. So we have a simple formula, the total cost price in this case multiplied by the quantity purchased in this case. That will give me the total amount of revenue invested on this particular product. I'm going to go and click on this comma style, which will convert my total revenue invested into an accounting format, or you could say a currency format in this case. Moving on to the right side, I have another column called as the margin amount. The margin amount, that is, we have already calculated the margin percentage using the Vlookup formula. All we got to do is calculate the margin amount from our cost price to help us get the selling price. So in this case, the margin amount is equals to the margin percentage multiplied by, you could say, the total cost price. In this case, we are going to use this particular column for calculating the margin amount on that particular cost price. So the total cost price multiplied by the margin amount will give me the selling price. The selling price is equals to the margin amount plus the total cost price. In this case, the total cost price is 922, and my selling price gives me a value which is close to this. Now I can round up the values here itself, like I have rounded off the column in the cost price. However, we'll do the rounding off while calculating the MRP if we get more of those decimal places. So let's see the selling price. We have got the selling price while adding up the margin amount as well as the total cost price. Now the GST on the selling price can be calculated using the column of the GST percentage that we already have in this case, and we are going to use the selling price over here to calculate the GST amount on this selling price. So the formula is quite easy. We are going to use this particular column, that is selling price multiplied by the GST percentage. We already have the column for the GST percentage on that particular product category, so the GST percentage will not change for a customer or for a seller in cases. So we are going to have the same GST percentage in both cases. So we are going to use the same column. The selling price multiplied by the GST percentage will give me the GST amount on that particular selling price. All we got to do is add both the selling price and the GST amount to get the MRP in this case. So that's it, selling price plus the GST amount gives me the MRP. So we have covered a lot of simple formulas in this test. So we will try and just quickly go and look at what all we covered. So we did the total cost price. The total cost price was the cost price multiplied by the GST percentage into the cost price. That is, we calculated the cost price into GST to calculate 18% of the cost price. Then we added the cost price to get the total cost price. We used the RoundUp formula to remove the decimal places after the cost price. Also, in this case, do not forget that we added a comma and a zero at the end of the RoundUp formula to avoid any other decimal places other than zero after that particular decimal. Also, we used a formula to calculate the quantity purchased is equals to 100 if you type all the values inside the table were 100. Now we added another column to calculate the cost price. The cost price was calculated using the formula random between. The random between formula was used to give a low point of the value and a high point of the value, and then we did a technique wherein we selected the entire column, right clicked on the selection, dragged the column to the right using the right mouse button, dragged it back to the left, and then clicked on copy here as values only to remove the formulas and just leave back the values in those cells. The next formula that we did was the total revenue invested, which is equals to the quantity purchased multiplied by the total cost price, and we calculated the margin amount from the margin percentage multiplied by the total cost price. In this case, the selling price is equal to the margin amount plus the total cost price, and the GST amount was calculated using the GST percentage column over here multiplied by the selling price column, which gives us the MRP. Now the MRP, which is equals to the GST amount plus the selling price. So we calculated most of the formulas using simple math, using addition, subtraction, and multiplication in these cases, and we got our simple values just by doing what we required. So again, we can see that there are a lot of decimal places in our MRP column. We are going to use the RoundUp formula again over here. So after the equal to sign, I'm going to use the RoundUp in this case, bracket open, and once the formula ends, I'm just going to put in a comma and a zero so as to ensure that we have zero decimal places after the comma. And there you go, we have formula in place, and the MRP has all the values up with zero in the decimal places. We have some other columns to look at, wherein we'll be looking at now quickly. So for now, I'm going to use some random go downs. I'm putting in the names of the regions or the area where the go down is present right now, not the region to be specific, but the area from where the go down is present. So let's say the first go down is in Powai, second go down is in Ghatkopar, third go down is in Mulund, fourth go down is in CST, fifth go down is in Vasai. Then we have Virar, we have Palghar, we have Nerul, we have Churchgate, and so on and so forth. So we have around 10 sets of go downs in different areas. What we are going to do is now repopulate the other columns with the same sort of cycled up go downs, and then I'm going to use the region to define specific regions for these go downs. For instance, we have the Powai in the south region, and the Ghatkopar in the south region, the Mulund in the central region, CST to be in the south region, Vasai is in the western lines. Palghar is again in the western lines. Nerul is again in the western lines, and church gates will be again in the south region. So we are going to formula and populate the same pattern below so that we have the regions in place as well. So we have a complex mix of go downs and regions. Based on this, we are going to do a little bit of different versions of populating the go downs and regions using VLOOKUP formulas, but we'll try and do that in another data set that we can use ahead. So let's put in some salespeople in place. I have around, let's say, 3 or 4 guys who are working in the sales as a salesperson. Let's say Jeff, let's say Tushar, let's say Robin, let's say Marco, let's say Polo, let's say Venom, let's say Spider-Man. So we have list of different kinds of salesperson allocated different kinds of names. I'm going to populate a few extra values for few extra people over here so that we get that kind of a variation where we would be able to work around with people. Let's in this case so we have a lot of people and a lot of salesperson who are selling a lot of products. We can use year and month column for the same as well. Let's say I'm not going to use the year in this case, I'm going to use the month over here. So let's start with, let's say, Jan, Feb, March. In this case, something like this. Or I can repeat the same format if required. Remember, the years are always in a different format, so make sure that you use them in a different way while dragging it out. I'm going to try and create a pattern of this data so that we understand what is actually going on. I'm going to try and jumble up the data as much as possible. So there you go. So we have a lot of months in place. For the quantity sold, we have purchased 100 quantities of all the products. So in this case, we are going to use around a random value. So we are going to use the random between formula again. So random between bracket open, and I'm going to say a value between 10 and let's say 60. So maximum product that I've sold is 60. So I'm going to use the random between formula in this case to generate random values of quantity sold. If you remember the same method, we are going to use the same method to remove the formula from these cells. I'm going to select the entire column, use my right mouse button to click on the right border of my selection. Once I've clicked it, I'm going to drag it to the right, drag it back to the left, leave and release my right mouse button and click on copy here as values only. Once that is done, my quantity sold column is now a column without formula but just values. Now the cost price of the quantity sold will be the quantity sold multiplied by the total cost price. So the total cost price is around 922 in the first product case. So there you go, we have the cost price of the quantity sold for the quantity of 34 quantities of the product 1 that is being sold. Similarly, the quantity of products sold multiplied by the selling price will give me the selling price of quantity sold. So that is quantity sold multiplied by the selling price of quantity sold. So in this case, I'm going to use the column MRP for being my product sold column, and my profit and loss generated by selling 34 quantity of the first product is equals to my quantity sold, that is selling price of quantity sold, minus the cost price of quantity sold. So there you go, I get the profit or loss on this particular product by using simple maths. And there you go, majorly you will be getting a profit value since we have always taken a positive value in this case. And the revenue that we had spent on purchasing the 100 quantities of product was around 92,200 rupees for the first product, out of which we have recovered 11,220 rupees by selling 34 quantities of the product 1. That is how you got to derive the formula in all these cases. So we have covered a lot in this particular session. That's it for the part 2 of this particular video. Wait on for the part 3, where we'll be using and learning something called as pivot tables and pivot charts. We'll be deriving certain analysis based on all these columns and how we can interpret the data in these tables and many other such tables using simple techniques called as pivots. So stay tuned for the part 3 of this video. So hope you like the content. Do like and subscribe our videos. Do share the content to all other people if you feel it's good. And finally, do leave comments in the comment section below. And you can find a link to this particular product database in the description below so that you can download it. Stay home, stay safe. Ciao.